Welcome everyone to the Kidlit Social. I'm Laura Backus, publisher of Children's Book Insider. And welcome everybody who's here live tonight, and welcome to all of you who are watching on the replay. This is going to be a really, really interesting conversation tonight. If you are brand new to us and you want to know what we do, please go to writeforkids.org/ultimate-cheat sheet, link down at the bottom of your screen there. And you will get on our list to be notified of all my social guests as well as other cool things we're doing. We have a lot of really, really amazing webinars scheduled for this year that are coming up, and you definitely want to hear about those. You will also get a free ebook that compiles our best beginner tips from 31 years in the biz. And actually, May 1st, we'll start our 32nd year of publishing the Children's Book Insider newsletter, which is pretty amazing. And then, of course, we've expanded since then to all sorts of other stuff. So get on the list and you'll find out about everything. Okay, now we get to celebrate. This is where you tell me what you've been up to, and we all get to celebrate together. I have 3 great ones this week. I have to move some stuff around so I can see it. Okay, Tanya Ann Pember writes, over a year ago, CBI, that's the newsletter Children's Book Insider that I published an article about Old Schoolhouse magazine. The Old Schoolhouse is an educational magazine for homeschooling parents. I had never heard of it. They assigned me not 1, but 2 articles based on a pitch I sent them. The first one came out in their spring issue. So congratulations, Tanya Ann. That is amazing. And it looks like a really nice layout that they gave for your first article there. I always tell people, don't overlook the magazine market. And that's why we feature magazines as well in the newsletter when we give market tips and market opportunities for you. And this is a great case in point. So congrats, Tanya Ann. That's wonderful. And I'm glad you've got a second article coming out. PJ McIlvain's debut middle grade novel, Violet York, Gilded Girl, Ghosts in the Closet, is coming out April 4th from Darkstroke Books, and it's a gripping historical mystery with hints of the paranormal. And it's available for pre-order right now on Amazon. There's a bit.ly link for you, or you can just go to Amazon and type in PJ McIlvain. PJ, for those of you who are subscribers, is the person who does all our featured author and illustrator interviews in the newsletter. And I'm thrilled that she's got her first middle grade book coming out very soon. So congrats. And finally, our friend, author Natasha. Oh, I'm sorry, Natasha. I meant to ask you how to pronounce this part of your name. Lazutin Wing. I know her as Natasha Wing, has published Displaced, the story of her father's escape from Kiev, which is how it was pronounced under the Soviet Union, to America during the German occupation of World War II. Though Natasha's grandparents were Russian and Siberian, they did not want to live under Stalin and instead chose to come to America instead of going back to Russia. It took 7 years living in displaced person camps before they could board a ship to Boston. And this is her father's story of being a child during that time. The ebook can be ordered on Amazon, and all proceeds will go to organizations aiding Ukrainian immigrants. And she wanted us to know that there's a Buy for Others button on Amazon as well, which you'll see on the order page where you can order the ebook, where you can gift it to someone else. So you can send the book to someone else, you can send it to a teacher, whatever you'd like. So there is a direct link that I created, and Amazon links, they don't let us customize them. So we will link to this under the replay when it goes out tomorrow. But also you can go on Amazon and type in Displaced by Natasha Lazutin, Lazutin, and it will come right up. So please do that. It's a really, really fascinating story of her father, and she is donating proceeds to the Ukrainian immigrant aid organizations. So send me your good news. You can email me, mail at writeforkids.org, and put celebrate in the subject line. And we will feature your news on a future Kidlit social. And remember, no celebration is too small. So you found an agent, you found a critique partner, you finished a first draft. Awesome. Those are all important road markers. That's not the word I'm looking for. Milestones. There we go. um, on your way to being a professional published author, and we want to celebrate them. And if you have info about a book that's coming out, please, you can attach the cover. Give me as much information as you can about it so that people will really know what the book is about. Okay. Here's a cool link of interest I wanted to share with you today. So The Caterpillar is an amazing literary journal of short stories and poems for children. It comes out of Ireland. It's awesome. You should all subscribe to it. It comes in the mail. It's very old school, and it comes quarterly, and it's beautiful. Anyway, they have an annual poetry prize, and the closing date is March 31st. So you still have time to enter. It's for an unpublished poem for children. The winner will get €1,000, which is a substantial prize, as well as publication in the summer issue of The Caterpillar. So go to thecaterpillarmagazine.com and you will find the entry information there. And I think it's €14 to enter, but you can do it online, and you pay with PayPal, I guess, or something, and it converts it for you. That's because they've hired this judge, this very esteemed judge, to look over these entries, and they want to pay for her time. So I appreciate that. Anyway, check it out. It's a great opportunity if you want to write poetry for kids, or just read poetry for kids. Check out the magazine. Okay. Jenny Fox, or J.F. Fox, as she writes under, has worked as a children's book editor, freelance writer, and author of 2 picture books, Friday Night WrestleFest from Roaring Book Press, which is the winner of the 2021 Redbud Read Aloud Award, which was voted on by 26,000 kids in 1,300 classrooms in Oklahoma. So that's the kind of award that all authors want to win. It's the one the kids chose. And it also was named as one of Parents Magazine Best Books of 2020. And Napoleon versus the Bunnies, which is book number 1, head-to-head of the head-to-head history series from Kids Can Press. She's also a school book committee chairperson and library advocate, which is how I first got to know her, specifically through her article in Publishers Weekly on December 13th of last year. Now, as members of the Kidlit community, we should all be very concerned with the shrinking budgets of school libraries, because they are responsible for a big portion of children's book sales, especially books that tie into STEM topics or other areas of the curriculum. But schools and libraries are a big, big chunk of your sales as a children's book writer. Plus, the school librarian is often the person who arranges for author visits at the schools. So not only is this something we should be concerned with on a big picture level of this is just wrong, but it's going to hit you in the wallet too. So that's why we should all really care about this. So I'm really glad Jenny's here today to be with us, to educate us all on this issue, and to also give us some ways we can become library advocates. So Jenny, please join me on the screen here. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're really glad. And normally I stop sharing my screen here, but you have a whole slideshow that we're going to get to. So we're going to keep the slides up, and then maybe during the Q&A, we can stop sharing and people can see us better. Also, I want to make sure we reserve, well, actually, before we get into this issue, which is so important, let's take just a couple minutes and talk about your books, because you're also an author, and I do not want to gloss over that. And I'm just going to let my dog out of my office real quick, because she's standing at the door here. So You never know. I didn't want her to start scratching at the door. Okay, so you're a picture book writer. You first worked as an editor in children's books,
Yeah.
and so I imagine you got a lot of great education that way. What was it like to then go, switch over to the other side of the desk and be the writer?
It's interesting. So yeah, I started my career. I first began working right after college. I did the NYU summer publishing program. And then I got a job at Penguin, and I was working with two of their mass market imprints. That was before it was Penguin Random House, just Penguin. And so we worked on a lot of formats like beginning readers, Mad Libs. I did like all kinds of things. Sticker stories, just any kind of like mass format movie tie-ins. So it was good. And they would also, I think they took pity on the assistants who were making not really a living wage, and they would give us little freelance assignments for things. So it also actually, I was able to practice my writing in that environment too, which was nice.
That's great.
Yeah, and then I transitioned after a couple of years of Penguin. I went over to Lee and Low Books, where I worked for almost 10 years. So the bulk of my career was there. And I started with them working on some educational little books, like leveled books that were called Bebop books. And they were just starting out their educational line. So that was a great way for me to work with a lot of authors and illustrators, because they wanted like 20 books out at once when I first got there. And then I slowly transitioned more into the trade side of working at Lee and Low. So it was good. I thought it was good to get a glimpse into the educational side too. And that taught me a little more about how children are learning to read, which is, I think, part of what's going on with literacy and, somewhat of a literacy crisis in the US right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we can circle back to your books at the end, because I'm sure people, by the way, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A about the writing of picture books if you
Yes.
are curious, as well as the library stuff we're talking about. But the whole literacy tie-in is so important with your advocacy with school librarians, because you have found, as you'll explain to us on the slideshow in a second, that reading scores go down in schools that don't have school librarians. I mean, it's such a connection. So why don't we get started here on your presentation, and then, like I said, we can circle back to talking about anything. So
And feel free, as Laura was saying, to ask questions in the chat as we go, because I might be hitting you with a lot of information, but the more I learn, like the more I'm like, why aren't people freaking out about this? So I just want to share as much as possible and try and amplify the issue. And even if you don't take everything with you, if you can take a few pieces of it, I think it's a good thing.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's the books we just talked about, and where you work.
So I grew up in Southeastern Virginia, and I started off going to private school till about third grade, and then my mother pulled me out and put me into public school. And so I also have, both experiences with private school and public school. I did have a certified school librarian in both private and public school at that time, though.
Okay. So let me go to the next one.
So across the U.S., school librarian jobs are being cut at an alarming rate. If we can go to the next slide. In an article in 2018 in Forbes, it said that the US had 20% less school librarians than in the past 10 years. And of the libraries that remained, the ALA found that up to 40% of them, were not being staffed by certified librarians. So that means that they're being staffed by someone without a master's degree in library science. So that might be a teacher, that might be someone's mom who's volunteering. Any number of situations are going on in schools across the country where you're not really having a real librarian. And the problem with that is that the good benefits that come to the students from a certified librarian are not going to be the same with someone who might just be in there checking out books, because a certified librarian has a special skill set, which we'll talk about, and they're also teaching our children specific things. So, you know, like a pretend librarian person might be better than nothing, but it's not going to move the needle necessarily in terms of the good literacy things that we're looking for and that have been proven in all these studies for years and years that come with a certified librarian in your school. So I'm living in Brooklyn, New York right now. I'm in a school district that they say my school district is the size of the entire St. Louis school system. So the districts in New York are huge. New York City in general, they just came out with this article in Ed Week that said, since 2005, we have lost 1,050 librarians in our schools. We went from 1,500 librarians in the New York City system to 450 currently. For an example, my children's school district, there's approximately 46 schools, including elementary, middle, and high. And we asked the superintendent's office for a list of the schools that don't have a librarian. The first disturbing thing was that they weren't sure initially. They told us they would look into it. And then they came back to us with a list of approximately 24 schools, so more than half. In 2019, in an article in Philadelphia Inquirer, they said that Philadelphia had just 7 librarians in their entire school system of 214 schools. In 2019, in the state of Michigan, 92% of the schools did not have a full-time certified librarian. It went on to say in that article that even if you included part-time, it didn't really change the number very much. I thought it was interesting that they ranked 47th in the states with the least librarians, which is bad for them, but there's apparently a couple of states that are worse. I tried to find those, but I couldn't find who it is. Sorry if it's your state. And the thing that I think is worth noting, aside from, I think, the New York number, most of these numbers are pre-pandemic. So what we're seeing is it seems like, you know, budgets are getting tighter. Enrollment in some schools is down. So the pandemic is likely going to make all of this landscape look even worse. So yeah. We can, yeah. So the reason why all of this is important, these are some of the more poignant quotes I found. More than 60 education and library research studies have produced clear evidence that school library programs staffed by qualified school librarians have a positive impact on student academic achievement. And I think it's important to note, I mean, there's years of this research. It's not like a maybe, it's like there's a ton of solid research out there when you start digging. And the interesting thing that you have to think about reading is it doesn't just affect literacy, because if you can't read, it's going to affect your math. You're not going to get the right answer on the math problem. You're not going to learn social studies. You know, reading affects everything. So without this basic building block, the kids are in trouble. Another thing to note is the loss of librarians is affecting certain communities more than other communities. Smaller rural districts, those with a higher proportion of English language learners, Hispanic students, and low-income students were more likely to lack a librarian. And some of the other statistics I've found are saying that it's those communities are often like as much as 2 times more affected. So it could be like a rural school district, it could be like an inner city school district. So it's different kinds of places and people, but it tends to be these groups who are already considered vulnerable in a lot of ways. Lack of libraries widens the gap between rich and poor. Low-income schools and schools that serve other marginalized populations lost librarians at a greater rate than schools that don't. This matters because school librarians are most important for students who are considered to be at risk. So in addition to those kids losing more librarians, those kids also benefit more from librarians. So it's like a double whammy there. Another really important fact, which ties, librarians and literacy, all of it together, is if kids are not proficient in reading by the end of third grade, they're more than 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. So, for example, in New York, the state mandates that there are librarians in middle schools and high schools, but not elementary schools, which if they're not reading by third grade. So also the state mandates are unfulfilled and unfunded in New York. So that's why it's important. And I was reading more about that third grade benchmark and why I was like, why is it third grade? So apparently it's because they say up until third grade, you're learning to read. And after third grade, you're reading to learn. So that's when you're expected to be taking in information on your own through reading. So like I was saying, it could affect your math, it could affect your science, it could affect your social studies. So that's where the third grade cutoff happens. Yeah.
I really noticed too with my own son when he was going through all the grades that starting in middle school and then really ramping up in high school, the amount of information that you are expected to comprehend with your reading is exponential with each grade. So really that third and even fourth grade, locking those skills in is so important because after that, the learning and the amount of learning that they have to do every year just takes right off.
Right. And they're supposed to go home with, assignments and reading passages and
exactly
test taking, all of that is going to go down if you can't read. I mean, I read the math problems. I was doing second grade math during remote learning, and I was like, wait, I'd have to read them 3 times. Just the way they're worded is tricky. So
yes.
it's hard.
That's another whole discussion.
Yeah. So these are some of the reasons this matters.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so here's some things. Since I'm on the school book committee, these were a lot of the questions. So I should say also, at my school, there was a part-time librarian we lost this past year. Our part-time librarian was always paid for by the PTA, which was a mess for a million different reasons and shouldn't be happening. So anyway, we currently don't have a librarian. But these are some of like the actual questions that the book committee received. Like, do we really need the school librarian? Can't someone else just check out the books was a big one. What about classroom libraries? So we can go, I think, probably to the next slide, but this is some of the things people kind of say. So I just want to talk about, first of all, what it means to have like a certified librarian. This is from children's book author Jarek Krasowski. I always say his name wrong, but many of you have probably heard of him. It's an awfully sad misconception that librarians simply check books in and out. The library is the heart of the school, and without a librarian, it is but an empty shell. And just to define a certified librarian, they're a highly trained educator, also known as a school library media specialist, who has earned a master's degree in library and information science. So the reason we can't just, put someone's mom in there is because these are very highly educated and skilled people who are doing a certain job in the school environment, doing many jobs actually. So if we go to the next slide, we can see some of the things. So the librarian is actually like not just like another teacher. I think they're like a very unique person in the school. For one thing, librarians generally see all of the kids in the school, which most of the teachers do not. Most of the educators in the building do not. They see all the kids. They encourage each child's personal interest, curiosity, and growth, and that makes the kids feel seen. So our librarian who just left, one of the things we did during the pandemic was make like little book packages for some of the families who we thought could use some extra books at home because they might not have enough over the pandemic. We would give her a name. We'd be like, Timmy in the 3rd grade. And she's like, okay, he likes cars and dolphins and whatever, like she knew every kid, what they wanted to read. I don't think anyone else in the building could do that. It's like a superpower. Another thing is typically the school librarian is the only person in a school with formal training in collection development, skillfully curating collections to meet the needs of a school's curriculum and providing students self-directed learning opportunities. So based on the dynamics of your school and the population of your school, your librarian also is trained to like think about the kids. They can like read the book reviews, order the books that your kids need, whether it's like in a certain language, whether it's on a certain subject, so that the kids feel seen, the kids have things that interest them. Because I know a lot of teachers that I talk to in the school too, they're like, I don't have time to like research books. I don't have time to read, PW and like read all the reviews of the newest books coming out. So they would go to the librarian and say, oh, what's good? What's new? I need something on this subject. Like, what have you got? So that's, a librarian is a curator of this great collection of books.
Mhm.
You can go ahead. Okay. Another super important thing is that librarians are one of the main sources of education right now about technology, internet safety, doing research, finding information, evaluating information. Is it true? Is it not true? Is this a good source? Is this a bad source? Can I use Wikipedia? As well as introducing new books and authors and different genres and points of view. So these are some of the things that the librarian is teaching in actual lessons during library time. I think a lot of parents at our school didn't even realize that the librarian was teaching classes. I think they thought the kids just went to check out books. So there's also a ton of research going down a different wormhole about colleges and universities currently saying that like none of the kids are prepared with research skills. Like they don't know what they're doing. And there's all this information out there because these kids are in a generation like no other where there's just information flying at them. It's more than any one person can possibly like vet, especially a young person. So more than ever, we need people teaching kids how to navigate this sea of information because it's overwhelming. I mean, even as an adult, it's overwhelming how much information is out there. So for kids and kids trying to do like good research, it's too much. So if we don't have these people in our schools, like imagine the teachers, can teach some about research, but oftentimes at our school, I know it was like if there was a big research project, then the librarian was involved and helping everyone. So on the flip side, not research, one of the things librarians do is they encourage reading for pleasure. So, the library is just usually like a welcoming space in a school. The kids want to go there. They get to pick their own books. It's not based on, oh, you're reading at this level, you can pick from that bin. Or I know when my son was struggling to read in first and second grade, they all knew each other's levels. So-and-so's a level, whatever. So I think in the classroom, reading feels like a much different animal. It's sort of, reaching benchmarks and whether you can pick from that bin or this bin. You go into the library, it's just, what do you like? So reading for pleasure, having choice and autonomy are key factors for reading success and creating lifelong readers. So to really hook them into the love of reading, not just reading as a skill, the library does that piece. I mean, I think kids need both. They need the structured learning, but they also need the free space. So I think the library is sort of a counterbalance to the classroom reading environment.
Mhm.
So this was really interesting to me. This was actually from I think it was either British or Australian journal. And it was a study they did that showed that reading enjoyment was more important for a child's educational success than their family's socioeconomic status. So basically, if you can get a kid to love reading and get them on that literacy path, that can break them out of even a cycle of poverty or being behind other kids. So it's, I think, really, really important. And then these are some of the the things that all these studies have pointed to. Having a certified librarian in a school is proven to improve literacy outcomes, equity, research skills, graduation rates, test scores, and more. So there's no downside. Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, and then I think the important thing to remember too is because, I mean, my children, you can see kind of my house, and my husband's always like, no more books. Don't bring any more books into this house. There's just piles like literally everywhere. And I read to my children at night and they read to themselves. And it's just been, they've been surrounded by books their whole lives. They've been to the library, they go to bookstores, but not all children these days are taken to libraries or bookstores. They don't all have books at home, and they're not all read to in the home. And as wonderful as I mean, I love the public library, but the public library, as a little kid, someone still has to like take you there. So if no one's taking you there and you don't have books in the home, then a school library is going to be your best opportunity to access a large selection of books in one place that you're definitely going to get taken to. The ALA has highlighted something in their mission, which is called equal access. And I kind of summarized here what my view of it is. So all students should have equal access to free information, both printed and online materials, and the skills to access them safely, regardless of race, socioeconomic status, education, or ability level. And I think what's important to think about is, so right now kids might go to the library and like research dolphins or learn how to look up, you know, something that's just school related, or just for fun. But eventually in their lives, you know, research skills are going to help people find job applications or scholarships or, you know, voting information, terms of a lease, like all of these things. So what they're, you know, learning on a smaller level now becomes this life-changing thing where it's like, how do I find this information that I need? So if people aren't taught those skills, then it's got really extreme consequences down the line.
Well, it's also very empowering to be able to do your own research and find the information you need instead of just asking someone, how do I do this? And I think teaching kids that skill early on empowers them greatly, especially like you were saying, the amount of information coming at kids right now is unbelievable. And not only that, but as we get into like high school, they're on social media. How do they know what they see posted? Right. Is it true? Is it not true? Should they believe it? And so just having these skills to assess and evaluate the information you're getting.
Right. And just to think that way, like, should I believe this or shouldn't I believe this? Or yeah. So I think that's very important.
So important.
So this is, now I'm kind of flashing to some of what's happening, what we're starting to see in the headlines post-pandemic. And I just, you know, here's a variety of sources. So no matter where you're getting your news from, the New York Times, it's alarming. Children are severely behind in reading, and the fallout from the pandemic is just being felt. Education Week, more than 1 in 3 children who started school in the pandemic need intensive reading help. And from Fox News, COVID pandemic contributed to historic numbers of students falling below reading benchmark. So it's pretty like universal right now that the kids are behind in reading. Partly because of the pandemic, partly because they were already slipping before the pandemic. I have theories on that too. About I'm a believer in phonics-based instruction, but so it's all just compounding. So to me, it's like, why take away? We need to be hitting them with everything we've got to get the literacy back up there instead of taking away one of the cornerstones of school literacy, which is our librarians. Sure. So as the kids are struggling, they're still we're still continuing to lose librarians, so it doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't
But
make sense. Well, and as you said earlier, they are also a support system for teachers, the librarians
yes,
are. Teachers now are expected to do so much every day beyond teaching, even, that they need all the help they can get. And then to expect them to also be able to, like you said, read book reviews and go through publishers' catalogs and figure out what books they should have in their classroom, and make sure that every kid has something of interest to them to
yeah,
read in the classroom. And then half the time the teachers have to use their own money to buy books for their classroom. So taking away this support system for the teachers makes no sense if we have this crisis here of kids not being able to read.
right.
Yeah.
It's shaping up that like we don't even know how bad it looks quite yet.
No,
Unfortunately,
no,
because we're just coming out of, or
I think you're
as
right. I
part of
think
the pandemic. Yeah,
it's going to be when all the kids who started kindergarten during the pandemic hit third grade, we're going to know how many of them can read,
and then
that
it,
benchmark.
it might
And
be too
that's,
late for some of them, and it's sad.
yeah, yeah. All right. So what can we do? This is the important question right now we need to be asking for sure.
Yeah. So all of this, was weighing on me. So I am mostly like a bookworm and would rather be at home, alone writing. But I got to a breaking point where I was like, we have to try and do something about this. So I started researching. Obviously, I have a lot of research because that's one thing I feel like, okay, like I need to like learn more as my first step before I tackle something. So I
Mhm.
think, that's a good step for people, like educate yourself. There's tons of like high quality educational research articles and journals out there, and a lot of them speak to, literacy, library law specifically, all of this. So I think step one, you can, learn more yourself. And then I spoke to a woman who was really helpful at an organization called Urban Libraries Unite, and they do a lot with advocacy in the cities. I know they've worked with Philadelphia and some other places. And one point that she made, she was a librarian, and she said most of the advocacy currently is coming from within the librarian community. So to elected officials, to all these people, it sounds sort of like an echo chamber because it's like librarians saying, you need librarians.
Mhm.
So I think the next step that needs to happen is it needs to be coming from communities and parents and the writing community and people who aren't librarians. Like we need to support the librarians and say, yes, we need librarians. Because when they just say it for themselves, it's not really, you know, people
It
aren't
doesn't have as much credibility. It's like, please,
right,
please, keep
keep
our
my
jobs
job.
safe.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think other people need to start helping them to advocate. Um,
Mhm.
so I think that's the next step. But we can look, I can let me see. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, so here's what I sort of, this has all been unfolding. Also, like most of my advocacy I started in like January. So I'm just trying stuff. So I'll tell you what we've worked on. And so writing letters, um, making noise, just bring this, they call it like one of those, what's it called? I'm forgetting the term now, like a silent problem or a not talked about problem. And that's true because I feel like in our schools, we went to a meeting of the PTAs across our school district. And then I brought this up and people were like, oh yeah, like I think we don't have a librarian. I'm like, why is no one talking about so I think talking about it, asking other schools, do you have a librarian? Why don't we have a librarian? Asking your principal. So writing, rallies, politicians and press, social media, just I think we just need to bring it into the light a little bit. So I think
Mhm.
just learning about it, talking about it, which all sound basic, but once enough people amplify it, I think it does help.
Mhm.
Um, so we can go to the next slide. So this is one thing that I came up with. I was in a writing group, and some of the people were illustrators as well. So my friend Jia Lu, I asked her if she would make a postcard, some art for a postcard. And then I I made the back. Um, so I said the reasons why libraries are important, and I thought it was important for the message to be coming from the children who this is affecting. So I had a box. I would be sad not to have a library. I am sad because there is no library at my school. And then to personalize them, I had them add things that they like to read about. So here's some of my favorites, which were ducks, the elements, and the exquisite art forms of Andy Warhol. Like every elementary school child. So then I started talking about the postcards at my school. I reached out to some of the teachers I knew and said, do you want postcards? And so one of the teachers who I'm friendly with was my son's first grade teacher. And she like immediately like took the ball and reached out to all these other teachers. And within like a day, I had requests for like over 300 postcards. So then I had to go print more postcards, which is fun. So what we ended up doing is the PTA, we printed out labels. We mailed to 4 people. I wanted to like start with like a manageable amount. And I also wanted the people who got the postcards to get like a good solid chunk of them. So we did 4 people. We did our city comptroller who's involved in some educational issues. We did 2 of our council people. And then we have a new schools chancellor in New York. So it ended up, once I offered it to all the teachers and we kind of hyped it up a little bit, we ended up mailing out over 450 postcards. We asked people to donate stamps. So we had parents who donated postcard stamps. I printed out the labels because we just want to make it like super easy for the teachers, so they could do it in class with their kids. And then I made a paper mailbox that I put in the lobby. And so the kids could feel like they were like mailing it, but then I would go empty it and mail them in the real mailbox. So it was great. And the kids got really excited about doing it and felt really important. We got a very nice letter back from our city comptroller saying that, you know, he heard the kids and he agreed with them. One of our city council people, I'll show you, I think in the next slide. So
Okay.
so that kind of led, this was in, the postcards were in January. We did that. Our school has a history of doing some like service projects around Martin Luther King Day. So I put that into that week. So the next event I just pulled together in my head and hoped it worked was on March 2nd, which is, I think, Read Across America Day. And it's also in New York State, the New York Library Association's Advocacy Day. They have one every year. And so I think typically it was like librarians going to Albany, which is our capital, to advocate for some legislation for libraries. So we decided to do our own thing for New York Library Association Advocacy Day. And we had a big rally at my kids' school. My son's school has over 600 kids. So we asked everyone to wear yellow, which is apparently the color of library advocacy. There's a thing that I learned from the New York Library Association where they wear these yellow scarves and they call them owl cowls. So we went with an owl theme. And I think the idea is that it mimics the master's degree of library science shawl. So the kids were excited to wear yellow and they got to come out at 7th period and they made signs and we made a lot of noise. And we also had kids, you'll see in the pictures, kids give speeches about what having a library means to them or meant to them. And a lot of them, excuse me, mentioned missing our former librarian, and it was actually quite moving. And then this guy here that I'm in the picture with His name is Lincoln Wrestler, and he's one of our council people that we had sent the postcards to. So he came to the rally. We invited him to the rally as well. He showed up and he gave a speech too. And it was great because he told the kids, you know, I got your postcards and that's why I'm here today. And I hear what you're doing. And by speaking up, you know, you can make a difference. So I also encourage finding ways to involve the kids because they get behind it. And I mean, these speeches they gave were amazing. Like
Mhm.
the kids get it. I don't know. Sometimes they get it more than the grown-ups.
Okay.
So because his name is Lincoln Wrestler, you can't really see, but I took my Friday Night Wrestle Fest book and I scratched through the W and put an R and I made it Wrestler Fest, which he got a kick out of. So just,
That's awesome.
yeah, so these are, you know, things that we've thought of just since January to do. So
Amazing.
that was, yeah, so that was beginning of March. And then next I'm kind of working on contacting other schools in our district to kind of amplify it that way. We have our school districts have like a community education council. I don't know if that's special in New York, I don't know. But and then there's another group where it's like the PTAs come together. So we're going to talk at both of those meetings, and I've got that toolkit that I put together, just some like articles and things to educate people that I want to share out. And the postcards can be downloaded on my website. It's not like proprietary. I want people to take them and batch print them. And I'm just trying to make everything like shareable and so that people can like run with it on their own. Because the whole idea is just to spread the word as much as possible.
Mhm. Excellent.
These are a few of the bigger organizations that are doing advocacy work and in different places in the US. So the ALA, obviously, but they have their own like advocacy section where they have tools and things that people can learn about too. Every library they're really a great organization. They were actually instrumental in getting Washington, D.C. recently had librarians put in every school in their school system. And part of that was because of the work every library had done. And they have a dedicated site that's saveschoollibrarians.org. And on that site, I believe there's a couple of like really quick links where you can like put in your address and it'll generate like a letter to your state representatives, things like that. So that's a great way too. Urban Libraries Unite, they're working more specifically in the cities, but different cities in the US. So if you're in a city, that's a good one too. And also what we did start a petition. Ours is specific to New York City schools, but we started a petition on what's the change.org. So I think we're up to about 700 people have signed so far. I was talking to someone who does some political stuff, and she was saying if you get to like 1,000 signatures, that's like a good time to approach some of your elected officials. I'm still learning myself. I don't know, but
That's great.
just different ways to tackle it. But I think just like be creative and do what makes sense to you and what you feel like you can do. And if you can only do a small part, that's still better than nothing. Yeah.
That's great. Well, and you've put together this amazing library advocacy toolkit that people can download. And I put this bit.ly link here, bit.ly/librarian advocacy. And we'll send this link out with the replay. But this is amazing. And I'm just going to stop share and then share another part of my screen that has the toolkit pulled up so people can see the tremendous resources that you've already compiled that they can use to get started with their own advocacy. So here, can you see the toolkit here? It's a Google Drive document. and there's just tons of links.
Yeah,
Um,
the postcard is on there. Our petition's on
mhm,
there for anyone in New York. Some of it is specific to New York because it's just like my place
sure,
where I put things I come across, but a lot of it is universal.
sure. So
Um,
you can
and
adapt it.
yeah, and a lot of the articles are
Mhm.
national articles.
And these talking points are so helpful because I've done advocacy for other issues
Yeah.
where we go to our capital in Denver. There's an advocacy day every year, and we make appointments with the legislators, our like our representatives from our particular region, or statewide, whatever the issue is. Having these talking points is really good because you go into a meeting and you have something to say, and they definitely listen more if you are prepared. So this is really helpful. I think also going to school board meetings, going to any type of meetings that you can with these talking points is just so important. So this is a tremendous toolkit. Thank you so much for making this
Yeah.
available. And again, the link will be with the replay. So you can all get that and run with it. So I know that you've been doing the bulk of this work since January, you said.
Yeah.
So have you, it's probably too early to know what effect it ultimately is going to have on the schools in your area. Have you gotten any kind of inkling so far that you're moving the needle in any way?
I mean, I think getting positive feedback from some of our elected officials and having them be willing to even be involved in the events that we're doing and, agreeing with the things we're saying. Because sometimes I think, especially as parents, with school stuff, you're kind of like, oh, do I know? Like, I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator technically. Like, this doesn't seem right to me, but like,
Mhm,
maybe I'm missing something. So I think just having people validate the points that we're making
mhm.
is good. And yeah, I mean, I've got a pretty uphill battle because I'm trying to change all of New York City, which is it's rather large. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
Yeah.
so yeah, but it's also like, why not? Like, if I like, why not say something? Just because
Yeah,
even if like I've had people say, well, they're just going to cut the budgets anyway. So I'm like, so I shouldn't say anything. So I should just, it's like it's not going to change if we don't say anything. So like,
exactly. And the defeatist attitude, I mean, I understand everybody's exhausted right now with so many things that we have to care about. So I get it. But also, if you don't have a kid in school, it's easy to go, it's not my problem. But your property taxes are paying for the public schools in your area. And if they are not properly educating children because they are cutting resources, your money is being wasted. And if you want to just think about it in a very objective, non-emotional, my dollars need to be spent well, that's a reason to care right there. Beyond all the other things that you have talked about today.
yeah.
And I think, to me, the most important step that I am going to take in I don't even know if the elementary school where my son went has a librarian anymore because I
Right.
don't, I don't have a kid there, but I'm going to find out. And I used to volunteer in that library, so I know how hard she worked. And um, I do have friends who have kids in that school, and I'm going to tell them about all of these resources you have. We can write letters to the editor of our local papers, just bringing this issue to light.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
there's
that
so many people that
alone,
don't know, just don't know.
that's going to make a huge difference. Showing up at school board meetings, I've got yeah, people are saying this in the chat box. Community members and parents need to go to school boards of districts that don't have librarians. Just showing up
Right.
is huge.
And I kind of, I know everyone's sick of COVID, but I have like a COVID analogy. It's like what New York was also like ground zero for COVID. And I had family in Virginia like, oh, poor New York. And I was like, okay, you might want to like, just because it's not happening to you yet, you might want to prepare yourself because
Right.
it's
Yeah,
coming.
yeah,
So as you know, once people start devaluing libraries and librarians, there's no like gate around that. Like it can
no,
come to you as well. There's
exactly.
another, yeah, there's a quote that I liked. Another quote. I'm big on the like research. Um, but I like this one. It was from Walter Cronkite. It said, whatever the cost of our libraries, the price is cheap compared to that of an ignorant nation. And I think that's, it's like that's what we're all up against. Do we want like,
Absolutely. That is that is absolutely true. And that should appall everyone, you know. Um, so what I challenge all of you who are listening to this to do is to spread the word about this. Download the toolkit. Again, the link will be right under the replay that we send out. Uh, Share it. Share this video. Share the replay of this. It'll be on our website. There'll be a link you can share. Please do tell if you have friends who have kids in school, share this information with them. And just like I said, showing up to meetings, sending postcards. I've done that with other causes. It does make a difference. If a politician, someone who's up for reelection especially, gets 100 postcards
it does, they pay attention.
from kids, and then maybe with a letter from a parent saying, here's why you're getting these postcards.
That's what I
That's,
did a letter alongside our postcards. I didn't mention that, but
yeah,
yeah.
that is huge. And, I think once this gets into the public conversation and people are aware of it, again, it's going to require, in some cases, bond issues, sales tax going up, et cetera, to increase the budget. But if you make it clear to people how important this is, I think it's much easier for people to vote for a budget increase when they know why it's so important. And so this is what we have to do. Um,
Yeah, I think,
so,
yeah, dovetailing with, I think, the literacy crisis hitting the
mhm,
news, and you and I were talking also about like the book banning,
mhm,
rise in book banning. Librarians are first line of defense with book banning. They're the people, like I said, curating the collections,
mhm,
selecting books that do challenge our children, like, and
mhm,
make them
right,
see different
absolutely.
perspectives and learn new things. So without those people, all of that goes up too.
It's true. It's true. And again, you're writers. All of these issues are of concern to you and will directly affect you. So very, very important. Nadine, I see you've asked if you can be unmuted because you want to add something. Unfortunately, I cannot unmute you in webinar uh, mode here because you're not a panelist. But please, if you want to type whatever you want to contribute in the Q&A or the chat box, we're happy to highlight it here and comment on it. There's a lot of great comments, Jenny, here from people who are thanking you so much for your work and your advocacy kit and all of this. It's truly an inspiration to all of us. And so I have a second challenge for all of you. I asked you to share this. Anything you do to help this cause, let us know and we will celebrate it in the celebrate section of the social, because that will also help keep this in the public conversation. So let me know. And if you have a photo of a classroom of kids writing postcards or something that we can share with the permission of the teacher and the parents, I would love to do that as well. So please keep us posted because this is so important.
I would also
Um,
just say, I know sometimes I don't, it's maybe me, but probably other
mhm,
people, you have that like imposter syndrome thing where you're like, well, am I qualified to be doing this? But that's why I think, yes, if you're a parent, if you're just a library lover, if you're just a community member, I think it's your
absolutely.
right to speak up for this, especially, if you educate yourself a little bit, that always helps. But I think at first I was like, who am I to be doing this? But I'm like, okay, why not
Well,
me?
it it is an issue that affects everyone in the community of the
Yes.
school that doesn't have a librarian, because it is the quality of the education the kids are getting. It is how these kids are going to be able to function later in life, the skills they're going to get, and that affects all of us. And then, of course, as writers, it absolutely affects us, and we are qualified to talk about it because we know we're reaching kids with our words. And if there's no librarian there, your words aren't going to reach the kids.
And
It's so.
most schools get like a set amount of, like, my librarian reached out to me after she'd left to say she get the schools get a budget every year for like library books. And if
Mhm.
there's not a librarian there, they probably just don't buy those books because
Yeah,
no one's like figuring it out. So
absolutely. That makes
literally
sense.
that books being bought that might not be bought at all if there's not a body in there to physically order them.
Yep, I totally agree. Dory has a great thought here. She says, I know of a small restaurant that conducts a monthly coloring contest with a theme. The drawings become the front of its menus that month. I'm going to suggest this as a theme. That's a great idea. Now you're thinking. And
Well,
again,
and this is the
that's
thing that as like children's book people, we're like creative. We can come up with
absolutely,
lots of good little
absolutely.
fun ways. Because
Mhm.
also, I would say this: it's a heavy topic. It's, I've thrown a lot of heavy information, but like at the rally, like we had fun. It's like
Mhm.
it can be fun. The advocacy
Sure.
can be fun. We came up with our owl posters, and
Yeah.
it can be creative. It can be fun. Like have fun with it. Do something creative because
Mhm.
those are the things that like get picked up in like a news story or catch someone's eye. um,
Absolutely.
so
Yep.
definitely, I think the children's book community is a great place because people have cool ideas.
And if you're having a rally at a school or anywhere, call your local paper, tell them it's happening. They may send a photographer, they may send a reporter, or write the article yourself, but submit it to them. There's lots of ways to get the word out about this. But you're right. I think also it's a great lesson to teach kids early on to advocate for what they care about. And this is a very personal issue for them
Mhm.
because they either had a librarian who's no longer there, or they have a connection with someone who is there and they don't want to lose that person. So it's very personal, and that makes it important to them. Yeah. So Nadine, I'm going to let you go here in a second. Jenny, you're probably exhausted. Uh, but Nadine has a great point that she wanted to make. A ripple effect of this issue is that universities and colleges are cutting their library programming, making certified librarians harder to come by. That's true. Teacher unions should be putting language in their upcoming contracts that support librarians. My contract states all elementary school students are taught weekly for 30 minutes by a certified school librarian. And it's been in our contract since the late 80s, whatever school district Nadine works in. That is awesome that your district's doing that. And again, if you are teachers and you're in a union, this would be a great thing to ask about if any of that is possible where you are.
And it
Um,
is true. It creates like this catch 22 because when they stop hiring as many librarians, then fewer people are going for the degree, the programs shrink, it becomes this thing
yeah,
where,
absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this has been awesome. And I would love to have you back on, Jenny, with more book talk of your books. So I just don't want to wear you out. You
That's
worked
it.
really hard for us tonight. But everybody check out Jenny's books too, because they're amazing.
Thank you.
And tell your libraries to order them. Oh, Natasha's asking for the bit.ly link again. So let me share hang on, got too many windows open here. Let me share my screen for that last link with your advocacy kit. There it is, bit.ly bit.ly/librarian advocacy. And again, that'll go out with our replay tomorrow. So I
I'm
expect to
trying to,
hear.
yeah, I'm trying to update my website too, but because I've been doing all this, I haven't gotten around to that. But I'm trying to beef up the advocacy section there too. So jffox.com, there's an advocacy section, and I should put this on there too.
You should, yeah. And Jenny, we'll keep track of all the good work everybody's going to do who's
Yeah,
listening to
I would
this,
love to
and I
hear.
will I will let you know so you can know that you've started something really important.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
good.
you guys for listening, and I hope everybody takes it out into their own communities.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I'm excited to hear what you're all going to do. So thank you all. Thank you again, Jenny. And we will see you all. What is today? I guess first Tuesday of April, which I don't know the date off the top of my head. So we'll see you then. All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thanks for
Good
coming.
night.